I'm Lucas Amorim, Chief Editor for Exame magazine, the leading business magazine and business website in Brazil. It's a pleasure. Last panel, we have the challenge to condensate the knowledge. And looking forward, this panel has the objective to anticipate the future. It's not an easy task, but we will do our best. First of all, I would like to start with Kevin. Kevin does business between China and Brazil for some years already. When you look at the last 2 years, the last 10, the last 15 years, and when you look to next 2 years, 4 years, 8 years, what's the biggest opportunities and what are the challenges that are already need to be addressed to develop the region? Welcome.
Thank you. Actually, first of all, thank you for having us. It's a pleasure to be here, the government of Macau and the Beyond team as well. Speaking about the China-Latin America relationship, this is a very strategic relationship that has been probably one of the most successful ones in the world over the last 20 years. We've seen tremendous growth, mainly in trade, but not only in trade, a lot of investment. So, we have many Chinese companies that have built, infrastructure, that have invested in mining, invested in oil and gas and energy, a lot of the technology companies that are now going. So, we've seen a maturing process. And as this has happened, more and more capital has been deployed, more and more expertise has been developed between both countries. And the new phase is the tech layer on top of all these different industries and the trade aspect that we have seen. And for the next 2 years, I believe, it might not be the most sexy, like AI and the social media content and everything that people were talking about. But as was just mentioned now, agri-tech, logistics tech, mining, all the infrastructure that is required as well as a result. This is where I think that Latin America shines and is world-class, and Asia, China especially, has a huge demand and a huge expertise that they could add to the Brazilian and the Latin American ecosystem.
We've heard today the necessity of Brazilian entrepreneurs to communicate themselves. Do you see that as a challenge to be addressed?
Yes. In fact, there's an old saying in Brazil that, Brazil is bought. Brazil does not sell itself. And, while that is true, I feel that also the new generation of founders and entrepreneurs has been greatly breaking this model. They have been more aggressive and more open and traveling overseas to promote their opportunities, and as well as aided by technology. So now, as we can even see here at Beyond, there are new tools for communication, instant translation. Obviously during the pandemic, being online and meeting people from all over the world, this has greatly accelerated the cooperation potential. So, we see this in the startups that we help bring from Brazil to the China competitions, to Macau competitions. And we continue to expect this to happen in the next few years.
Very nice. Carlos, what has Brazil to offer to Chinese investors and to global investors as well? Welcome.
I think Brazil has a lot to offer. I think the first answer to your question is a huge addressable market. That's a basic answer. Second, a testing ground for Chinese technologies. So this morning I had breakfast with the founder of SenseTime. They want to they want to expand in Brazil. So on the AI research side of things, Brazil can be a very good battleground. And it's clearly a region that is some bias compared to Europe or even North America.
When Chinese look to Brazil comparing to opportunities in Latin America and in Southeast Asia, Europe, United States, are Brazil and Latin America a top spot?
Yes, North America innovation has challenges with China, geopolitical competition essentially. Europe has no growth. Southeast Asia, yes, it is a competitor to Latam, so I'd say probably the first spot. Latam has the advantage of having better demographics.
And what about social barriers? Earlier today, we talked a little bit of the necessity of Chinese and Brazilian entrepreneurs to know each other. Do you see that as developing?
Yes. As Kevin mentioned, like we had a trading partnership with China. So Brazil benefited a lot from China's growth in the early 2000s, in the first term of Lula. Now we're seeing more and more private investments, so family offices and privately owned businesses investing in Brazil. Number one example being Shopee, two Shein, and now you're seeing Temu, landing in Brazil. So more to come.
Before taking the word to Faustino, I would ask you, Kevin, as these cultural barriers. You are maybe the specialist one here. Do you see that, is that still a problem, or is that not on the table anymore?
No, it's definitely an issue, and as with the rest of the world, you know, culture matters, right? At the end of the day, we are human beings, and the way we relate to other people is also a huge factor in determining the success of any project, any business relationship that you have. Yes, China and Brazil are still very different culturally. However, I would also say there are a lot of similarities, and we are, you know, big continental, diverse countries, and, you know, both very welcoming and open people, very warm. And I think that there's a friendship, you know. We just talked about the geopolitical differences between the U.S. and China and, you know, other countries as well in the West. Brazil, on the other hand, you know, is and Latin America in general is much more friendlier and welcoming and open to China. Eventually, you do have some political, you know, figures now in Argentina that might, you know, be a little different. Before we also had, you know, Brazilian president. But at the end of the day, the relationship, the commercial and investment relationships are so strong that, you know, the people need to have a good relationship with China. And in that regard, you know, China being welcoming and opening its country to receive all the talent and all the different visitors will help break down these cultural barriers. There's a lot more understanding now on the Brazil side from China and vice versa.
I heard here at Beyond that Chinese investors and entrepreneurs made a big effort the late years to understand Brazil, and that Brazil maybe needs to study a bit more about Chinese and prepare ourselves and before coming to China.
Absolutely, that is still true. You see a lot of Confucius centers from China being opened in Brazil to help bring Chinese culture. There are a lot of, obviously, the community of Chinese in São Paulo and in Rio and in other parts of Brazil is also very active. But yes, there is still a big mystification regarding Brazil here in China, and we do need to work hard on bringing those barriers down, but they're slowly coming down.
Yeah, that's why we've been here at Beyond. It's important, right?
Exactly.
Faustino, talking about trends.
You explored two sectors that have stood out significantly: the Brazilian online betting market and the online teaching for medical and corporate education. The Brazilian online betting market moved an impressive $1 trillion in 2023 alone, and making in Brazilian markets the fastest growing and the most promising market for gambling in the world. This expression hasn't occurred in a dysregulated market, and with the recent legalization of gambling in Brazil and the respective online betting house, with the provision of clear rules, low state taxation, and a clear process for explicit license, which generates of the observation of 30 million loyal customers in the previous years alone. With the possibility of expanding this market, a growing of the list, another 20 million bidders, and expected by 2024, totaling around 50 million impressive 50 million active bettors. In the way, generating great profit potential and investments, opportunities for operation in this expanding market with FG investments as operated effective business and legal management in the licenses and in taxation process. Sorry. Also highlighted and this growing of the online education market in Brazil with the expected focus on medical and corporate education, that is the digital education market for the AAA public. This Brazilian market moved in the year 2023 alone around in practically $30 billion. The big issue is the existence of numerous state fiscal devices for online teaching and the low cost on management such operations, which allows startups and segments on the rich levels above and entirely percent perfectly. As a successful story, FG investment at Carad, FG Med, the largest expat in the area of medical education in Brazil, focusing on the AAA segment with already earned more than $70 million with a profitability margin above 90%. Just given the commercial rapprochement between Brazilian and Chinese companies, the market is extremely prone to enabling strategy to make the investments with shortly and medium terms. Returns in these important and innovation segments of the digital economy.
We have the two different futures here. One is when we talk about ag tax and clean tax and the obvious competitive advantages of Brazil. And Faustino brought another perspective of bets, and we can talk about blockchain, AI, and these global opportunities. Is Brazil well positioned in these topics as well, or we should focus on natural advantages like ag tax and clean tax? What's the future you see ahead, Carlos?
I think Brazil should be thinking about how to position itself in the AI race. I don't think we should be focused on agri-tech and how to export natural resources to other countries or how to build new climate tax. I think that's good, but that's not enough. We need to be a cutting-edge technology, innovative, entrepreneurial country. And in that regard, we need to have more investments in AI. We need to have more investments in vertical software. So that's why we essentially need more long-term capital to Brazil.
I would also like to add to that. I agree completely. And in order to also make that happen, we have to focus on the infrastructure, right? So Brazil has a chronic power shortage. How are we going to power all the data centers that are required to make AI servers, work, and all the data centers that we need? So the investments that are, necessary in the hardware and the infrastructure, those are areas where China excels in and can bring and add a lot to Brazil. I mean, if you look here, you have the huge battery producers, the largest ones in the world. You have cooling and climate tech technologies that help bring the infrastructure to make these very advanced technologies happen in Brazil. So the infrastructure for me is key, and we're going to need a lot of investment in those fronts as well.
Talk about challenges. What Brazil can learn from China in education and in talent pipeline? I should start with you.
Okay. Talent, as was mentioned in an earlier panel by Mr. Luis, talent is the key, right? Without talent, there's no tech ecosystem possible. And, China has the highest production of engineers and talent for IT and technology in the world. Brazil and Latin America is very deficient in that segment, in that specific capability, unfortunately. And those are the main qualifications that we require in order to have a vibrant technology. And we're able to do a lot with what we have, but that is still insufficient for us to be able to compete at the highest levels. When we're talking about the cutting edge, we're up against all the big dogs and the best talent and the best universities in the world. And our focus is how to make that and to attract new talent as well.
Carlos, are we developing in talent production, or is it going to be a huge problem for Brazil in the next 2, 4, 10 years?
Yeah, it's a problem today. I think we don't have enough tech talent. I think that if you look about basic metrics of number of engineers, the number of mathematicians or computer scientists, data scientists, in a proportional level to the size of the economy, is still very low compared to the overall demand for tech. So we just need to do more, and we have a very unorganized economy, I would say.
When you came to China and you talked to family offices and to companies, do you see a talent gap, not just between China and Brazil, but between Brazil and the world, or in tech, in the leading companies, Brazil is top level, but the problems maybe in the next tier?
If you want to level set Brazil among emerging markets, it's one game. Brazil is far behind China. I would say Brazil is ahead of Europe in many things. So fintech being number one, fintech/banking, healthcare as well. With all the health techs we have in the country, IoT, you name it. Like all digital native businesses, we are way ahead of Europe. We don't see the same level of innovation in Europe, other than maybe biotech and climate tech. Compared to the US, of course, we're far behind, but we have a lot of learnings from China. And China, Brazil seems to be a priority for China, not only for the public sector, but also for the private sector. So if you look at foreign investments from private sector from China to Brazil, it has been growing at double digits in the past 5 years. So we see a lot of opportunity in there. That's why we come here very often. I think the global South, it's a trend that is here to stay. So the Middle East, Southeast Asia, and Brazil will be spearheading this. Brazil, of course, will drag Latam and the economies of South America.
Faustino would like to add on what you are doing to produce more talent, to shortage this talent gap.
Really, in Brazil, the Brazil is the more biggest gambling market.
I mean, in your education business, what can you do to shortage talent gap in Brazil to produce more technical professionals?
Yeah. In Brazil, Brazil have great a great necessity of the technicals. And technicals, surprisingly, don't have the regular studies in Brazil. Dificuldade de falar. Tem uma grande dificuldade. Na verdade, português. Português. Na verdade, há uma grande dificuldade de formação técnica em Brasil. A formação universitária brasileira, ela não traz uma formação técnica específica, especialmente para a área médica. Então, o que acontece? Tanto na área de negócios, quanto na área médica, que são os dois pontos que mais cresceram no Brasil. Neste ano, a gente teve aqui alguns CIOs, inclusive de algumas outras operações de educação corporativa. O que acontece? Desculpe até pelo português, mas eu arranho ainda um pouco no inglês para conversar. Mas o que acontece? Essa dificuldade de formação técnica e essa carência, por outro lado, do mercado de uma formação técnica, por exemplo, na área médica, exigiu que edtechs fizessem e pulverizassem. O Brasil, como a China, tem um grande território. Então, há uma grande dificuldade de levar o ensino técnico específico, e no caso da área médica, as diferentes especialidades para diferentes locais do Brasil. E, em função disso, houve a necessidade de unir a tecnologia e de se criar tecnologias que levassem, por exemplo, o ensino prático de especialidades médicas, cardiologia, neurologia, que chegassem a locais onde profissionais precisavam aprender esses conhecimentos para poder aplicar e atender a população, porém, não havia uma possibilidade de se levar esse conhecimento de forma presencial. Isso acontece também na China. Só que o que acontece? O Brasil criou uma tecnologia que permite que esse ensino se pulverize em todo o país e, de certa forma, isso gerou grandes IPOs. Os maiores IPOs da área educacional no ano de 2023 foram da área de edtechs, da área de ensino médico e da área de ensino de saúde. E, por outro lado, a educação de negócios corporativa para CIOs tem um pouco o mesmo cenário, porque o Brasil, assim como a China, é um país continental. E nós temos embora empresário de tecnologia esteja nos grandes centros, como São Paulo, Rio de Janeiro e Minas Gerais, nós temos grandes empresas, sobretudo do agro, que estão em locais mais distantes e, em contrapartida, são as empresas que mais investem em inovação. Então, as edtechs também de educação corporativa e de negócio e de IA, por exemplo, acabaram criando novas tecnologias de ensino que levaram esse conhecimento a pessoas que antes não tinham acesso. Mesmo grandes empresários do agro ou outras empresas, indústrias que estão em locais mais distantes do norte, do nordeste do Brasil ou mesmo do extremo sul. A China passa pelo mesmo desafio no momento, porque ela tem grandes empresas e de tecnologia, mas também de educação, no centro e, sobretudo, no sul do país, e há um grande desafio de levar essa tecnologia, ou melhor, esse conhecimento para o norte, para o nordeste da China, que é um país tão continental quanto o Brasil. Mas ainda há uma cultura do ensino presencial na China. Então, muito a China pode aprender com a evolução que o Brasil teve nos últimos 5 anos com as edtechs de ampliação do ensino para outros locais, sobretudo do ensino técnico, sobretudo do ensino profissional.
Kevin, besides education, do you see any other field where Brazil can produce global stars, global companies in the next years?
Yeah, I think there's tremendous potential, despite the shortcomings that we mentioned for Brazil. Brazil has a specific advantage where biotech, I think, could be a field where Brazil could excel. The Amazon and the biodiversity that Brazil has will allow for the discovery of several new compounds. So, new medicines, new solutions that could be exported throughout the world. We're seeing China, Macau specifically, is very interested in investing heavily in this sector. So I believe there could be some potential cooperation there. And other areas where Brazil, also has very good entrepreneurs, fintech is a very obvious one to mention. I think that will continue to have new innovations, especially with all the central bank opportunities, the new regulations that are open for new companies to rise, which has been discussed already at length. But again, I think ag tech, because of the nature of what Brazil and Latin America does, will be a very big source of innovation, and that could be exported to the rest of the world as well.
Carlos, what about your perspective? Do you see more Brazilian companies being global, going global, not just to China, but making more business abroad in the next years?
Yeah, so we backed some of them. Cases like Pismo, core banking platform, GGB, SaaS, iPaaS business. So on the B2B side, we see more and more. On the B2C side, it's a little harder, but companies like Nubank have a great amount of value of equity, so they can finance growth in other regions. So Brazil has, I think, complemented to this on the fintech space and on software productivity space. We have a lot to contribute, and now we're seeing more and more cases of IoT. I don't think healthcare will be an exportable business case for Brazil because it's very local. But recently, in the past 5 years or so, we had successful exits via IPO or strategic sale of Brazilian businesses that went global.
How important is nowadays for your investment decision to a company, to the potential to be a global business? Is that really important, or is that a nice to have?
It's fundamental. So, of course, we have our investment committee on a case-by-case basis, but if the business has, so number one, the bigger the addressable market, the better. And two, the liquidity for exit is much greater.
And is it from Brazil to Latam, or is it from Brazil to the world, or maybe from Brazil directly to China?
I think it's mainly, for now, Brazil to the US, Brazil to Europe. I think I can count on my hands the number of Latam cases that are transferable between Latam countries, like Mercado Libre, Nubank now trying to develop Mexico. But I don't think it would make sense for most founders to go from Brazil to Mexico and vice versa.
Kevin, can you tell us, from your perspective, or Chamber of Commerce, what will be your priorities in the next 2 years to increase business between two countries? What will be your priorities in the next years to increase business between China and Brazil?
Yeah, if you look at the history, it's been, initially the first wave is trade. The partnership between Latam and China and Brazil specifically has been, very focused on trade. Then the next wave of growth has been on, investments. And now the third wave is technologies. I believe, obviously the resources, the commodities will continue to drive the relationship. That will only grow, but there is a lot of value to be had in the technological cooperation, especially when connected to what already works. So, all the sectors that we mentioned, which are already very strong in the relationship, are probably sectors where technology can be added on top to further enhance this cooperation and be very successful and scale up. Basically, sharing more information, integrating more of the markets, having events like these, having more events in Brazil. We already have several delegations and groups of Chinese business people that are going to Latin America and exploring and knowing. They're very aggressive, very active. The same way now we're seeing more and more Brazilians also and Latin American countries coming to China. this exchange will be what will drive forward the future of this relationship. And on top of that, just to complement, there are more efforts also for funds, both capital and just private and public capital, to be able to invest in these opportunities, and will also help drive these countries together, these regions together.
Well, thank you very much. Our time is over. I would like to thank you all, thank Beyond Expo, and thank INSHE for receiving us. It's a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.